Sherry stood in the doorway of her small cottage, staring out at the rain pouring down in thick sheets. The sky was a dull gray, the clouds heavy with moisture, and the wind howled through the trees, bending their branches as if they were made of rubber. It was a miserable day for most, but for Sherry, it was just another workday. She grabbed her black PVC overall from the hook by the door and pulled it on over her thick sweater and work pants. The material was slick and waterproof, keeping her dry from the relentless downpour. But there was always one problem she couldn't seem to solve: her hair. Sherry's long brown locks cascaded down her back like a waterfall, beautiful and healthy, but a complete nightmare when wet. No matter how much she tried to keep it dry under hoods or hats, it always found a way to soak through. And drying it afterward? That was an ordeal that took hours. Even when she used a hairdryer, it still seemed to hold onto the moisture, remaining damp for what felt like an eternity. She often spent her evenings impatiently running her fingers through it, checking if it had finally dried. She had tried different hair care routines, but nothing worked. It was an endless battle. She sighed, tucking as much of her hair under her hood as possible, and stepped outside. The rain slapped against her hood, bouncing off the shiny material of her overall as she made her way to her truck. It was time to get to work. By midday, she was drenched. Not her clothes, thankfully. The PVC overall had done its job, but her hair was another story. Strands of wet brown hair clung to her face, sticking to her cheeks and neck. As she raked up a pile of sodden leaves, she muttered under her breath about how unfair it was. It wasn't just about discomfort, it was also the added weight, the annoyance of dealing with dripping strands when she was trying to focus on her job. She couldn't understand why something as simple as hair could cause her so much frustration. Her boss, Greg, came by to check on her progress. He leaned against the fence, a smirk on his face. "Complaining about your hair again?" he asked. Sherry huffed, shaking her head. "I swear, Greg, if I have to go through another night waiting for my hair to dry, I might lose my mind." Greg chuckled. "Told you before, just cut it off. Better yet, go bald. Problem solved." She rolled her eyes. He always joked about it, but the idea had been creeping into her mind lately. What if she really did just cut it all off? No more struggling with wet hair, no more hours spent drying it, no more frustration. The thought was terrifying, yet oddly tempting. She imagined herself without hair, and though the thought made her heart race, there was a strange sense of relief hidden within it. She shook the thought away and kept working, but the idea lingered in the back of her mind. Every time a wet strand stuck to her cheek, every time she felt the weight of it dragging her down, she found herself considering it more seriously. That evening, after another long day battling the rain, she peeled off her overall, sighing in frustration as she ran a hand through her soaking wet hair. It was sticking to her back, dampening her sweater. Enough was enough. She grabbed her phone and booked an appointment at the hair salon for the next morning. If she didn't do it now, she'd never do it. She lay awake that night, tossing and turning, her fingers playing with her long strands as she tried to imagine herself with short hair, or even bald. The thought sent chills down her spine, a mixture of fear and excitement. Could she really do it? The next day, Sherry sat in the waiting area of the hair salon, her legs bouncing nervously. The smell of shampoo and conditioner filled the air, and the distant hum of hair dryers added to the atmosphere. She had told herself she would just get it cut short, maybe a bob or a pixie cut. But deep down, she knew she was curious about something more drastic. A stylist approached her with a warm smile. "Sherry, you're up." She took a deep breath and followed the woman to the chair. As she sat down, she looked at her reflection. Her long brown hair flowed over her shoulders, still damp from the morning shower. She imagined herself without it. Would she still feel like herself? Would people treat her differently? Would she regret it? "So, what are we doing today?" the stylist asked, running her fingers through Sherry's thick locks. Sherry hesitated. "I was thinking of cutting it short, something easy to manage." The stylist nodded. "All right. How short are we talking? A bob? A pixie?" Sherry bit her lip. Maybe a pixie to start. The stylist smiled. Good choice. Let's do it. As the scissors snipped away, Sherry felt the weight lifting from her head. Chunk by chunk, her long hair fell to the floor, leaving her with a short, feathered pixie cut. She ran a hand through it, surprised at how light it felt. It was cute, fresh, but something inside her told her she wasn't done yet. She swallowed hard, looking at her reflection. Her heart was pounding. Actually, can we go shorter? The stylist raised an eyebrow. Shorter? How much shorter? Sherry took a deep breath. All of it. I want to go completely bald. The stylist blinked in surprise but then grinned. That's a bold move. Are you sure? Sherry nodded. I'm sure. The stylist reached for the clippers and turned them on with a buzz. The vibration sent a shiver down Sherry's spine, and as the first pass of the clippers shaved her head, she felt an unexpected thrill. The buzzing continued as her thick brown locks tumbled to the floor. She could feel the warmth of the clippers against her scalp, the sensation oddly soothing. When the buzzing stopped, Sherry stared at herself in the mirror. Her hands trembled as she reached up to touch her scalp. It was so smooth, so alien, yet it felt incredible. She ran her fingers over it again and again, marveling at the sensation. It was freeing, a sense of lightness she had never known before. The stylist rubbed some lotion over her freshly shaved head and grinned. You look amazing. Sherry exhaled, a smile creeping onto her lips. I feel amazing. The next day she returned to work, the wind and rain battering against her but no longer causing her any problems. No more wet hair, no more hours spent drying it, just the freedom of feeling the elements directly on her skin. Greg's eyes widened when he saw her. Whoa, you actually did it? Sherry smirked. Told you I might lose my mind. Greg laughed and shook his head. Well, I gotta say, it suits you. Other coworkers gathered, shocked but impressed. You're so brave, one of them said, and honestly, it looks incredible. Sherry ran a hand over her smooth scalp and smiled. It wasn't just about convenience anymore. It was about feeling good in her own skin, and for the first time in a long while, she truly did. No regrets, no second thoughts, just confidence and a newfound sense of herself.